Good evening. Welcome to the December 2nd, 2024 meeting of the Stillwater City Council. This time I will call the meeting to order, and I'll ask that you all stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, no proclamations or presentations tonight, so we'll jump right in. Questions, comments, or action on the consent docket?
Move approval of consent.
Second.
With a motion and a second on the consent docket, please vote. With a vote of 5-0, the consent docket is approved. That takes us to item 6, the public hearings. 6A is to receive public comment regarding a request from Wargo LLC for a map amendment to rezone property addressed as 1324 East 6th Avenue from commercial general to commercial shopping, CC-24-136. Did we have good notice on this item?
Yes, we do.
Good morning, Jacqueline. Good morning.
Rise and shine.
I have been saying good morning all day long.
Well, good evening, Mayor and council members. Jacqueline Porter, City Planner. All right, I'm going to be presenting the next two items that are on the agenda together since the map amendment and the plan unit development are in correlation to each other for the property at 1324 East 6th Avenue. At the end of this presentation, there will need to be individual public hearings and motions for the map amendment and the plan unit development. So, since it's been a while since PUDs have been presented to the council, I'm going to briefly go over the process of a PUD application. The preliminary PUD is first presented to the Planning Commission and is required with a public hearing. The Planning Commission makes a recommendation of an approval or denial or approval with conditions to City Council. The approval can be made with conditions. And then the PUD that is being presented at the next City Council would make the recommendation by the PC, which is either to approve or however it was presented. Then a final PUD is presented to staff and they review and approve. If there are no changes or only minor changes, then staff will make the final approval. And if staff does not approve of any minor changes, then the denial, then it is denied, and then it can be appealed to the Board of Adjustment, so forth. And then if there are major amendments to the PUD, it just repeats the whole process and it comes back with all the public hearings.
Jackie, if I may just interject one
Go
thing.
for
So
it.
our code is a little bit unique and it requires an ordinance on approval of the preliminary planned unit development, the PUD, as well as the zoning. So depending on action taken this evening, what would come back would be one ordinance that would denote the zoning as, for instance, CS-PUD. So it would be, that's how it would be formalized, just for your information.
Yes. So, on to the actual topics tonight. All right. The owner for 1324 East 6th Avenue is requesting to rezone the property from commercial general to commercial shopping with a planned unit development to allow for the conversion of the existing motel to a multifamily apartments. I will explain later in the presentation the reason for the request to this zoning. But first, let me go over the basic information of the subject property, which is located in the northeast area of Stillwater near the intersection of East 6th and South Hafner Street. The subject property has frontage on East 6th Avenue and South Hafner, located just north of Fairlawn Cemetery. Here's a street view looking north off of East 6th Avenue. Well,
We have it in our packet.
oh, okay. I'm just over here just echoing. Well, you can't see it, but the current zoning of the property is commercial general. Commercial general is located along East 6th. And to the north, there is small lot, single family, which is located to the south, which is the cemetery. And then you have the two-family residential is to the west, and two-family and multifamily is in the vicinity over to the northeast of the subject property. and you can't see it, but the future land use map that was adopted with the 2030 comprehensive plan projected the desired use in this area at the time of the adoption to be commercial. Now, I don't know. We'll go into the long story, though y'all can't see it, but.
Why don't you hold it a second, let's see if we can.
Yep. That way you can actually see the site plan.
Well, we have
We do have it.
we have maps
You
in
have
our
it? Okay.
packets.
Well, okay. I can.
And all of the agenda packet information is available with the agenda online.
Yep.
So anybody that's interested in viewing the maps she's describing, it's available online.
Yes. All right. So the plan unit development is going to be called Stillwater Studios. It is approximately 1.05 acres with an existing motel consisting of 32 units, a laundry facility, and an office building. The proposed use of the property is converting the existing motel structure, which was built in 1950, the laundry facility, and the lease office, into 32 dwelling units as studio apartments, renovating the laundry facility, and renovating the office building to an office space with a resident property live-in space manager that will be there 24/7. The reason for the PUD, in conjunction with rezoning request from commercial general to commercial shopping, the proposed uses on the property are personal and laundry services in a structure with a mixed use, which is the office space and the dwelling unit for the property manager. And are permitted use by rights in commercial shopping. However, in a multifamily use portion is only allowed in CS with a specific use permit. The current zoning of the property is CG, does not allow a multifamily use. So CS is the highest commercial district that would allow multifamily, and the bulk standards fit with the surrounding and staying with the commercial zoning request zoning to meet the desired use that was projected by the 2030 comprehensive plan along 6th Avenue. Though the existing setbacks is not conforming to the required setbacks in CS in the district, the plan unit development will establish the setbacks based on the existing structures, the screening, landscaping, and all the uses previously listed. So the proposal of repurposing into an apartment is to provide a more stable occupancy that would benefit the community in multiple ways by renovating a blighted property and creating a different type of housing for the community. The maintenance of the structure and the operation of the facility on the site will be under a single ownership. Property maintenance will be residing on the property, allowing for readily available security. So on October 29th, 2024, a town hall meeting was held at the Stillwater Chamber of Commerce conference room for the property owners within 300 feet of the property. 6 individuals attended the meeting. Gosa Associates and Austin, the project manager, were available for questions. There were no objections to the proposed use, just questions to clarify the intent of the property. Gosa Associates is here if you have any further questions for the applicant. But now, do you have any questions for staff?
Counselors, any questions for staff?
I'm just curious. I know it looks like from what I could read, the hotel currently has 32 rooms. It's going to maintain those 32 rooms.
Mm-hmm.
Is the footprint of those rooms changing to accommodate a studio apartment?
No, my understanding is that they're just renovating, they're getting it all out, we're renovating it and adding kitchenettes to all of them.
Kitchenettes, okay. That was, I think, part of my question is
Yep.
if they were gonna have kitchens included in them.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
On the zoning issue,
Yes.
commercial general does not allow multifamily even with a permit, special use permit,
No.
but commercial shopping does.
Yes.
This is why people hate zoning. And this, I mean, this is
Yes.
really, I mean, the first time I looked at this, I'm like, wait, we're rezoning it from general to shopping so that we can turn it into apartments? Like that, it makes no sense. And I don't know if that's just our code. I know it's not just our code. I know it's zoning in a lot of ways has these kinds of weird things to it. But I think, you know, just, this has nothing to do with this project in particular. But just from a public relations standpoint, this makes it so hard for our community to really understand the point of some of these hearings, and should they come and talk about it or not? Because it's the way we do zoning is just very, very problematic in a lot of ways. I mean, again, this project is not the issue. I would love it if we can look at, I know we have looked at zoning, and I know part of our comprehensive plan we're going to talk about here in a little bit, just the way our zoning categories are set up to make stuff like this more user-friendly and understandable to the public, because, just looking at this makes no sense to anybody. So anyway, neither here nor there, but I would love to see us fix our zoning code in general to make it a little bit more user-friendly.
If it's any consolation, Mayor, I think a lot of times with mixed use, that can be the challenge inherently, regardless of how it's zoned. Most communities really struggle when you have residential and office or commercial kind of intermixed, which is a really great idea for properties like this, but it can be very challenging for traditional zoning.
Well, let's figure out some non-traditional zoning. Any other questions for staff about the project? Okay, so we do have 2 agenda items here. I did announce item 6A, and that is just the zoning change from commercial general to commercial shopping. At this point, I will open the public hearing on item 6A. I know we do have the owner representative and the project manager who have signed up to speak. If either of you have something you'd like to say, or just here for questions if we need to. Just a question. Okay. I don't have anyone else signed up to speak. Is anyone else here to speak specifically about these items? All right, seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. And Jacqueline, can you let us know what the Planning Commission's recommendation was on the zoning?
Yes. So the recommendation for the map amendment by Planning Commission was to approve with a vote of 4-0.
All right, thank you. Counselors?
Motion to accept Planning Commission's recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the Planning Commission's recommendation. Please vote. The vote of 5-0, item 6A is approved. Item 6B is receive public comment regarding a request from Wargo LLC for a planned unit development to allow conversion of an existing motel structure to a multifamily district with a laundry facility and office at property addresses 1324 East 6th Avenue, CC-24-137. We had the same good notice on this item.
Yes, we did.
This time I'll open the public hearing on the PUD. We do have the representatives from the owner here. Do I have anyone else here to sign up to speak? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Jacqueline, was there a recommendation from the Planning Commission on this item?
There was. Planning Commission recommended approval with a vote of 4-0.
Thank you. Councilors?
I did have one quick question on the planned unit development piece. I was just curious, I don't think I saw in any of our packet information the price point of affordable housing is something that's really challenging for our community right now. I was wondering if they could speak to the price point for this housing.
You could just introduce yourself.
My name is Austin Core. I am the owner's son, and I'm here representing him, which his name is Brian Core. He's the owner of Wargo LLC, which owns this property. In regards to your question, the goal for this property is to open up all these units with all utilities included, including Blue Peak being wired in for internet, at a price point of $750 to $775 per unit. So the goal is to speak on that a little bit more. We know these aren't huge units; they're nothing crazy, but they're safe, they're reliable, the roofs don't leak, the electrical works, everything, there's no bugs, it's clean, it's new, it's fresh, and if somebody goes in there and wants to live in there, they'll have a safe place, and everything will work absolutely as it should. That's our main goal. So $775, $750 is our range, and yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Of course.
So, come back. What length of rentals do you anticipate? Monthly rentals, longer-term rentals? What's your plan on that?
Our goal is longer term rentals. Ideally, we'd like to stick at 1-year leases. We'll probably be doing a lot of 6-month leases Basically, our goal is always to do longer terms for more stability for us and all the other tenants. People moving in and out all the time is not what our goal is. It was a hotel previously to this, and we're not in line with that at all with our thinking for what this complex will be. So 6 months to a year is our goal. We may open it up to 3 months leases for special scenarios, but that is definitely something that we are not going to be looking for.
So one more quick question. The rooms, the walls between each room, are they concrete block or are they masonry?
They're cinder block. Yeah.
Okay.
Cinder block with their concrete filled cinder block.
So they're going to be hard to tear down
Extremely.
and hard to catch on fire.
Yes. But
Okay.
very supportive, very stable, very level. Yeah. Well built.
Very good. Thank you.
Of course. Anything else? All right.
Thank
Thank you.
Councilors, action on the Planning Commission's recommendations.
I move to approve the planning commission recommendation.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, that is also approved. Item 7 is general orders. 7A, approve a master lease agreement with Enterprise Fleet Management to lease city fleet vehicles. Christy Cluck's here to talk to us more about this.
Yes, good evening. Christy Cluck, Assistant City Manager and Finance Director. And before I get started, wanted to point out to you that there is a related item on the SUA agenda later this evening under consent. So the city maintains a fleet of approximately 275 vehicles. That count does not include any heavy equipment, trailers, or specialty vehicles such as waste management trucks or bucket trucks.
But it does include police department trucks. Police vehicles.
Correct,
Okay.
yes. So we have historically funded our fleet refresh through a pay-as-you-go or cash basis, but that has proven to not be very effective in providing a timely refresh of our vehicles. And so our average model year of our fleet is 2012, so over 10 years old. That aging fleet carries high maintenance costs, low fuel efficiency, and just kind of lacks reliability for our employees. So staff has worked over quite some time on trying to identify a more sustainable approach to our fleet management and maintenance. And in that process, staff identified 7 goals of what a successful program would look like. So number 1, develop a consistent annual investment in replacement to increase the health of the citywide fleet. Second goal is to provide dependable equipment to those positions that require a vehicle in the performance of their job. Third is to right-size the number of vehicles in our citywide fleet. Fourth is to ensure vehicle type assigned to employees and crews aligns with the daily tasks that they perform. Fifth is to increase the overall efficiency of citywide fleet performance. Sixth is to decrease the citywide fleet maintenance costs. And then finally, decrease citywide vehicle fuel costs. So Enterprise Fleet Management offers a solution that we feel like meets many of those goals that I just listed. So their program offers vehicle financing. So we're looking at 5-year terms. They are able to leverage manufacturer discounts and incentives. They're also able to purchase off of the Oklahoma State contract. So when that price is beneficial, they can do that. At the end of the lease period, the vehicles would be sold by Enterprise, and the city would have the option to reinvest any equity back into the program so as to reduce future costs of leased vehicles. And because we would be using Enterprise to sell those vehicles, we would be able to leverage the vast resale market that the Enterprise company has access to, as well as their expertise and timing of that sale of vehicle. So the city would like to pilot the Enterprise program to evaluate its fit as a long-term solution for our fleet management. The initial order of vehicles would include 8 for public works, 8 for water utilities, 4 for wastewater utilities, 5 for electric, and then 8 marked units and 2 unmarked units for the police department. So this is 35 units
or approximately 13% of our fleet. The initial outlay would be for a partial year of lease payments, as well as the aftermarket equipment and installation. And that price tag is $365,000. That total would be distributed amongst several funding sources. So $250,000 would be from the city capital fund, and that would cover our public works vehicles and the police department vehicles. $50,000 would be from the water fund, $45,000 from the wastewater fund, and $20,000 from the electric rate stabilization fund. Future year lease payments are estimated at about $425,000, and staff would include that in the adopted operating budgets moving forward.
And that 425 would include the equipment installation things that we need for the various vehicles, like
Yes.
police vehicles?
It would include a part of that. For police specifically, any upfitting in excess of $10,000 requires a 50% down, and so there is some upfront.
Okay.
So I will pause there and entertain any questions. I also have Roman Aldiz here in the audience, and he is from Enterprise and can answer questions specific to their program.
What do we spend annually now? I'm all for cycling things in and out and to make sure that we maintain a good fleet of vehicles, but I'm curious what we spend now for those annual.
So that's been the struggle, is that's included in our capital plan, and we struggle with dedicated funding for capital. And oftentimes these types of purchases are one of the first things to go when we're trying to meet a budget constraint. And so that's where the inconsistency comes in and why we have such an aging fleet. And so we're trying to work into a program that we can just upfront allocate that annual contribution to that to really get our fleet healthy.
Okay, so
So, I'm sorry, that number's zero in some of our budgets?
It depends on the year.
Okay.
It fluctuates.
So, what you're saying though is that we haven't been spending enough money on fleet maintenance and management over the years, and so we need to put this in as a regular, and this gives us an option to do that in a way that is consistent.
Yes.
We're not just trying to figure out year over year, okay, we got to spend $200,000 this year, and next year we're going to spend $700,000, and next
Right.
year. But it's not actually, if you look at it and say, is this actually replacing a higher cost item on our budget for the last several years? If you look at an average of, say, the last 5 or 6 years, is there an average number that you can kind of say what we spent, or is there a
I don't know that I can
comparative
ballpark that. I know, what was it, end of 23, first of fiscal year 24, we purchased, I believe, 8 police units. I think that's the last time that we purchased police units. Electric has purchased a few vehicles just recently, but it's really sporadic in our fleet replacement.
So, this is a cheaper option than going out and having to buy all of these vehicles. Just looking at the sheet of the summary of the leases here, we're talking about, I don't know what the number was, total number of units.
It gives us an opportunity to spread that cost out over a number of years
We
as
wouldn't
we
be able
try
to
to
go buy
transition,
35 cars.
right? As we try to transition into a more sustainable approach
Okay.
to regular refresh.
Sorry, Tim, go ahead.
okay, you mentioned refresh. So we get these this year, and at what point do we refresh them? What's our lease obligation? How long will we keep these vehicles?
So we're planning for a 5-year term, and we would look at selling them at 5 years. And that's where we're going to rely on Enterprise's expertise in the timing of that sale, so that we can maximize what we get, the equity we get from that.
Okay, in the unlikely event, which does happen, a police car is ruined,
Mm-hmm.
what happens to the lease there?
So we carry the insurance on that. And so we would have to make Enterprise whole.
Okay. And next year, another 35 units?
I'm not going to say that. That's a little premature to say it's going to be another 35 units, but we're definitely going to look at what our next phase will look like.
Okay, but this is not a one-time thing. This is going to be
No.
an ongoing process every year where we put new vehicles in the fleet
Yes.
and salvage old vehicles.
Yes.
And we could find ourselves at some point in the future where 200-plus vehicles are all being leased, and we have lots of commitments on lease payments.
Potentially.
Do we have a ballpark on what that number could look like for?
No, because also what we're trying to do in this process is look at the vehicles that we're purchasing and making sure that it's the right vehicle. If we don't need a king cab, we're not going to buy a king cab. We're going to buy a single cab. Part of the problem we have right now is when we replace a vehicle, oftentimes another department will say, hey, I want that older vehicle. I could use that. And so we tend to hang on to things that don't really fit the function that it's serving. And so oftentimes we see that carries higher maintenance costs. It's older, it's maybe bigger than what they need. And so we're trying to reevaluate all of that as we systematically work through the process.
You know, one of the things I would ask, presuming we move forward on this, I would ask for a year from now when you're back for the next phase, is we try to project out what leasing the whole fleet looks like,
Okay?
because that's a substantial price tag I
It
would
is.
expect that we're going to be paying every single year on lease payments. And I think before we get too far into this, we need to understand how big the apple is we're trying to eat.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, we've cut some of these capital costs out of budgets because we had to, not because we wanted to. And if we've got now these payments on these lease cars and we can't cut that out of budgets, if we need to help balance the budget, where are we then going to be able to make cuts that don't have that same impact? I mean, what would the answer be to that question
we
at this
would
point?
definitely not want to overcommit ourselves. So I am very cognizant of that. We are looking at trying to track some maintenance savings and redirect those into the program. I'm going to be real anxious to see how the rolling that equity back into the program benefits us. So there's a lot of unknowns, and that's why we're saying this is a pilot that we want to try. And so it may not be that we order new vehicles every year for the next 5 years. We might want to see how some of it kind of plays out.
Okay, more, go ahead.
You mentioned one of the goals is to right-size the number of vehicles. Are we thinking that, I know you just mentioned that sometimes a department will take a truck that somebody else isn't using. What does it look like to be right-sizing? Do we have too many vehicles?
Potentially,
not have enough?
we're looking at that. I don't know that I could say that definitively, but if you think about having an aging fleet that's not reliable, I could assume that we are probably keeping some vehicles on hand in case that truck goes down and needs to be in the shop to be repaired, because the work still has to get done. And so I do feel like that is occurring in different pockets across the city.
So we're not sure how many vehicles we might be able to reduce that fleet by. Because as I'm thinking about the numbers, and we're talking about, 35 vehicles this year, at some point we get to a point where we've gone 5 years out. Hypothetically, we've done this every year. We haven't replaced all the vehicles yet, and things start to compound, I guess, in
Yes.
terms of how much we have to do per year.
Yes.
So we're thinking in those terms.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. There's still a lot of unknowns that we're exploring.
So you would see us doing it this year and next year for sure, and then see how it turns out? Or I guess I'm looking for what you're thinking
Well,
the future looks
also
like.
what Enterprise can help us with is helping us identify which vehicles it makes sense to replace. so we'll have some conversation. That's what I anticipate having conversations with Roman as we move forward to kind of look at what might the next round look like. Do we have a certain segment of vehicles that it makes sense to target that are maybe high maintenance costs or something like that?
Christy, just to confirm, this master lease agreement, though, there will be a separate lease agreement for city council with a schedule, or excuse me, for the city with a schedule of city fleet vehicles. There would be a separate master lease agreement for SUA with a schedule of SUA vehicles
Correct.
with the appropriate funding. And the lease payments are in consideration of a 5-year term. So for these, subject to annual appropriations, as required by Oklahoma law. However, these 35 vehicles are anticipated for that 5-year term.
So that was my next question. We can only appropriate for this year, right?
Yes,
But
and
yet we're going into a 5-year lease. How does that work?
excuse me, the lease agreement has a non-appropriations language, so although we're agreeing to a 5-year term, it is subject to annual appropriation by the council and SUA.
So one more, what if we walk away at the end of year 2, we have to adjust the value of the vehicle to make enterprise whole, is that correct?
It's covered in the master lease agreement. I don't have it in front of me. We have
Okay.
reviewed it. It contemplates what happens in the event there is a termination. However, again, it is subject to annual appropriation, so provided that there were not funds sufficient for a new fiscal year to service the agreement would be canceled.
Okay.
And I will point out, this is a similar arrangement as to what we do with our waste management trucks and with our fire trucks.
So, and tell me again, the fleet size that we have, 200 and some?
275.
So 35 times, there you go. I mean, we're not really replacing on a 5-year cycle
No.
all of our 275 units.
No.
Christy, I had a quick question. I was recalling, I think the last vehicle purchase that we had done was police vehicles. Do we always purchase our police vehicles just from the general, like the capital fund, or are they normally, is it funds allocated specifically to the police department? I was trying to
There's
remember.
no dedicated funds for police vehicles.
Okay,
Yeah, so it's either general fund funding or city capital fund.
interesting. Okay.
So, you're kind of wearing two hats on this, right? I mean, from the city management standpoint, we need to upgrade and replace some of these vehicles that aren't performing the work that we need them to perform so that our people can do the work they need to do. But also as the finance director, you've got to make sure that we're not putting ourselves in a bad financial situation here. Walk me through your sort of balancing of that. I mean, you feel like, I get there's pressure from the operations side to say we've got to have these vehicles that work, but from the finance side, do you feel like this is a reasonable, responsible way for us to go about
I
spending
do,
money?
and so if you'll recall, when we did our refresh of our computer fleet, probably about 6 months ago or so, well, longer ago than that, but we entered into a similar arrangement to, again, try to levelize our operating costs and to spread that out over a longer period of time. And so this is just a similar approach that we're trying to do to really protect and invest in our daily operations, instead of having that hang out there and just waiting for some capital funding to come available.
Mm-hmm.
To mysteriously appear.
Right. Because if you sit and wait, it's not going to happen. But if you plan for it and you project it, and this is a known, so this is something we can project over the 5 years. And when we're building our budget, we always fund our debt first. I mean, we just take that approach. You got to pay your debtors back.
This isn't a novel concept, I think, in city fleet management. This is fairly common to see.
It is, and there's other cities in Oklahoma. Owasso has done this. I don't have the list off the top of my head, but we did look into other cities. We reached out to Owasso. They have been very happy with the program.
Christy, can you clarify too, at the end of the 5-year term, we have the option to keep the vehicles. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, they're owned by us. Yeah.
But we have to buy them at the end of the lease.
Well, we would have paid for them at
Paid.
that point.
Yeah,
right?
we should have, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I still look at this, you said our fleet's 275, and we've got 35 we're proposing now, times 5 years is 175, so we've still got 100 vehicles out there floating in limbo that we will not have on this cycle, potentially.
True, yes.
Okay. Now, I also recognize there's probably some vehicles that can easily go more than 5 years that we own, so
Right.
we're going to endeavor to figure out which of those we can extend the life of and keep this 5-year cycle at 175 vehicles, give or take some.
I mean, I don't know if I can answer that because I don't know that we'll replace this many every year. I mean, I think that's all yet to be determined. I think we'll be looking at maintenance records. I mean, we pulled maintenance records for some of these vehicles. You know, if we're faced with putting a new engine in something, then that may go on the list as a priority rather than, especially if it's an older vehicle. I think there's a lot of variables that play into it.
And hypothetically, next year you can come back with 50 vehicles. Hypothetically.
Hypothetically.
Would it be a possibility, so we get to the end of the 5 years, we've paid for the vehicle, it's ours, we can choose to keep it or we can have them sell it. If we choose to keep it for 2 more years after that, would they then help us sell it after the 2 years? Or would it have to be sold at the end of the 5 years?
So once the vehicle,
Oh,
Introduce yourself.
my name is Roman Aldiz. I'm with Enterprise Fleet. Thank you guys for having me here. And I can answer any other questions that you guys might have as well. At the end of 5 years, the way it's set up is so that if it stays on the program, there would continue to be a $25 a month management fee for us to handle the tax title and licensing all of the different things on the vehicle. And at that point, when you guys decide to sell the vehicle, we would then dispose of it how you guys need. Enterprise would maintain title of the vehicle throughout as long as the vehicle is in service. But at the end of that, we would be able to sell the vehicle. And we're also, under certain circumstances, able to sell other city fleet as well for you.
So just to clarify what you just said, at no point would the city own that vehicle.
No, the vehicle is titled to Enterprise, and the purpose of that is we are a registered dealer, but because we have an agreement with the manufacturers that because we're not a brick and mortar location, that we have to maintain title to the vehicle. Otherwise, we have a competitive advantage over brick and mortar dealerships.
so at the point you all, okay, so we get to the end of the 5 years, we decide we want to sell the vehicle. How do we decide, because we said that could be financing that feeds back into our equity. What determines how much we would get back from a vehicle if we don't actually own it?
So you own all of the equity in the vehicle.
Okay.
So whatever it's sold for, just as an example, if we depreciated a vehicle and there was $2,000 left over at end of term, and the vehicle sold for $15,000, you own all the equity above and beyond whatever's owed on the vehicle at the time of end of lease.
So if we paid $40,000 for a vehicle and you all turned around and sold it after that for $42,000, then we have $2,000.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Mr. City Manager, you have a degree in industrial engineering, I think. So do I. This is a very traditional industrial engineering problem, and we have senior design teams always looking for a problem. This would be a perfect problem for them.
Yeah, yeah. Because as Christy mentioned, there's ongoing analysis and that we'll be doing in this program, and that's why Christy's not committing to what we're going to do next year. We want to continue to analyze this and look at how we can simulate it in an IEM term and make sure that it is a program. The great thing about this is there's been a struggle, as Christy mentioned, to commit these capital funds to vehicles. That's why we have such an aging fleet. And so this is our effort as management to set aside a set amount of funding that we feel we can commit to for 5 years and work that into the budget to start taking care of some of the capital needs, especially our fleet that is pressing on our other departments, or our departments.
The
30 or so vehicles that will retire with this will get surplused out, and then does that money go back? Do we put that into this particular budget, or does that go somewhere else?
So my recommendation for that was to put it back into the program, into the, the funding sources where the vehicles are housed currently.
Looking at the age of the vehicles, though, there's not a lot of money there.
Yeah.
I don't know. Have you tried to buy a used truck recently?
No, but I bought a new one, and I don't want to do that again.
All right. Further questions for staff? What's your recommendation for us, Christy?
Okay. I have a motion to approve the master lease agreement with Enterprise Fleet Management, approve budget amendments appropriating funds for lease and aftermarket equipment and installation payments totaling $250,000, and authorize the city manager to sign related documents.
Counselors?
Make a motion to approve staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the staff's recommendation. Please vote. That's approved with a vote of 5-0. Looking forward to seeing all of the data that comes back on how that works out. Item 7B is an Envision Stillwater 2045 Comprehensive Plan update. Jacqueline Porter.
Yes, okay. Don Warwick with Friesen Nichols here to update the City Council on the status of our comprehensive plan project, including the overview of the planning process, public engagement activities conducted to date. They will also provide the plan's vision, guiding principles, and the preferred approach to the future land use, as well as key takeaways from the housing market assessment. That is not it, but that is. All right, Don, it's all you.
Good evening. Dawn Warwick with Friesen Nichols. I am serving as the project manager for your comprehensive plan, Envision Stillwater 2045. I'm super happy to be here and give you guys an update. I might have put too many things in the description of what we're going to talk about because I'm going to try and make this a 15-minute presentation, so and leave time for conversation. But what we want to cover tonight is, as Jackie mentioned, just an overview of the planning process to date, what we've learned through or how we've engaged the public, and also how that sort of shaped the foundation of the plan, the framework being the vision and guiding principles. We'll talk a little bit about the goals that are stemming from that on the various topics within the plan, and kind of the first efforts relative to specific topics, the housing assessment that's been conducted, and some takeaways from that, as well as how that's all of this is starting to shape future land use. So beginning with community engagement, we launched the project back in February. We had an open house meeting at the community center. It had a presentation as well as sort of a come and go opportunity for people to provide input through various exhibit boards as well as free-form responses and conversation. At that point in time, we also launched a community survey through the project website that went live also in February. And with that, we have, with the survey, we've collected almost 600 survey responses. Also, there are elements of the website that are interactive that sort of mimic that open house meeting that was conducted and allow people to provide feedback on an interactive map where we've received about 150 recommendations, comments. Those basically are, we like this, or we think this particular area or element of the city could use improvement. There's also an ideas wall, which is the image at the bottom right, and that's sort of a sticky note wall where people, it's a free form comment opportunity for people to choose a topic and provide their input on that topic. And so far we've received 86 comments on that. So we're getting some good activity with regard to community engagement. Following the launch in February, we began a series of focus group meetings. So basically through the spring and into the summer, we spoke with a variety of different subject matter experts. So staff helped to build a pretty extensive email list of people throughout the community that represent different sectors. One that I neglected to put on here is we also spoke with the Chamber of Commerce Infrastructure Committee. I think that was also in March. But total, there were about 60 different participants that engaged in that effort. Our subconsultants that are focused on economic development and housing have also been reaching out to individuals for one-on-one conversations relative to those specific areas of the plan. So all of that information, of course, goes into building the plan itself. The plan document will consist of 8 chapters, and so the first 4 are shown here, beginning with the community snapshot, which is basically your benchmarking and demographic information, kind of existing conditions, what we've learned about what's on the ground today. Land use is a very core component and influences basically all of the other elements of the comprehensive plan. Transportation is what it is, but we're looking to ensure that not only are we updating the vehicular thoroughfare plan, but also other forms of transportation, so all modes of transportation are addressed. Housing and neighborhoods, we'll of course talk about the condition of existing housing and neighborhoods within the city, as well as what the demand is and how that can be addressed with regard to meeting the needs of the community moving forward. The town gown assessment and resilience discussion that are sort of the lines that run through the bottom of the screen will be addressed really in every chapter of the plan. We recognize that all of these different topics, and of course you see here the final 4: economic development, community character, infrastructure, and implementation. All of these different things, are impacted by the resiliency of the community as well as its relationship with the campus, with OSU. So economic development, we'll be talking in that chapter about employment opportunities, really focusing on how to craft a unified economic development vision for the city. Community character, this is a little bit of a grab bag. It talks about kind of a healthy community, but also it gives a nod to placemaking and how to establish those areas that are very uniquely Stillwater and how to make that, kind of make your mark with those recognizable elements of the community. Infrastructure, of course, is sort of the foundation that all this has to function on, making sure that we understand what capacity exists so that new recommendations for new growth, for development in certain areas can be addressed with regard to infrastructure needs as well. The implementation chapter is really your playbook. That will be sort of the action item list of things that are going to be composed of projects, programs, policies that will move forward the initiatives that are outlined within the plan. So the framework of the plan, all of those chapters are all intended to serve the vision of the community. So the vision statement sort of rides over top of all of the elements of the plan and is generally an aspirational statement of what the community expects to look like in 2045. The guiding principles are basically the values that the community shares that support that vision. So working through the advisory committee and utilizing the feedback that we've received through community engagement, this is the vision statement that's been accepted and is now sort of embedded in the plan. And so basically in 2045, Stillwater is an innovative community that deeply cares for one another, cultivating a strong sense of belonging. It's a desirable destination for residents, visitors, and businesses, cherishing deep-rooted connections, prioritizing education, and radiating a warm, friendly character. So there's a lot in there. But it was intentionally kind of broad to capture a lot of the thoughts that we heard from the advisory committee as well as from the community and the various feedback elements that were conducted. Excuse me. Guiding principles, not quite as expansive, but they do capture quite a lot. So there are 4 main guiding principles: connect Stillwater, thrive Stillwater, identify, and realize Stillwater. So there's a little statement relative to each of those, just to give you a better description of what that means. So Connect Stillwater really speaks to physically connecting the community, but also connecting the community through relationships, partnerships, and other types of community-based efforts. Identify Stillwater, again, it's something that allows us to look at how different elements of the city are uniquely Stillwater. So whether that is through physical design within your public realm, within the areas of the city that are between the buildings and streets, or if it is through things like branding and other types of destinations that can be kind of raised up. Thrive Stillwater, this is the ability to ensure that you have that you offer the community all of the resources necessary to thrive. That may be economic, that may be having a healthy community that has opportunities for different types of active transportation elements. It also has to do with programming and partnerships. And then Realize Stillwater, there are all the nuts and bolts and functional processes that have to happen in order to accomplish all of these things, and being able to realize the community in the way that it's been envisioned is kind of what's captured within that guiding principle. So the goals emanate from those guiding principles, and they are kind of measurable outcomes. They're goals related to each of the plan chapters. And I won't read all of these. I'll just mention this because there's another slide for the other two chapters. But they're intentionally set up so that each of your chapters, land use, transportation, et cetera, are structured in a way that you get a good image of what's existing today and then what the goals are, so that you know what specific tasks have to be done in order to measure those goals and determine that you're making progress towards meeting your vision for the community. So the graphic on the right is really just to give you an image of how everything sort of stacks with regard to the hierarchy of the planning framework. So a few takeaways. We have conducted the housing assessment and had a couple of conversations with the advisory committee relative to the findings of that assessment. So a little bit of this is just benchline existing content. The existing distribution of housing units within the city, about 51%, so just over half of your existing housing units are single-family detached. That's not uncommon, but you see within this chart that 24% sort of jump to the 10 or more units. So you've kind of got this gap between single-family detached units and the larger apartment complexes. And so what we recognize with that is that there's an opportunity to provide different housing types and fill that gap. Where we do that is a little bit more related to the image on the right, and this is just a snapshot of the age of the housing stock within the city. So the items that are the lots that are shown up in green are residential units that are older than the year 2000. They were built prior to 2000. And then, of course, the blue represent those that are more recently built. So you can see that the more recently built structures typically, with a few exceptions, are sort of on the edges of the community. That's basically what your regulations support and make it easier to build in those locations. But what you don't see is a lot of infill. So you don't see in the core of the community newer homes. So in that situation, we recognize that as kind of keying into the need for addressing property maintenance issues and other types of challenges that happen when your housing stock begins to age. So in a variety of different formats, we asked people to tell us what their preferences were with regard to housing types. This is just an image of the open house input board that we had available. And obviously, people are super happy with a variety of different single-family housing types. But you see that there are, some desirable smaller lot and smaller footprint housing units that are indicated as being preferable. And then on the multifamily side, duplex, triplex, quadplex, townhomes, accessory dwelling units, with not as much love for the really big apartment complexes. I show this as an example. It's reflected also in the survey responses and other online input that we've received. So it's consistent across the board.
Before you go on,
Yes, sir.
back at the left-hand side, third row down, what type is that has all the dots?
This one says urban and small lot. So,
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Prime infill opportunities. So key takeaways, and these might actually be listed more as key challenges relative to housing within, within the city as we move forward. The demand for housing is outpacing supply. That's not unique solely to Stillwater, but it is a challenge. Current housing stock is aging, and we know that a good majority of your workforce lives outside the city and commutes into the city. So there's an opportunity to house more of those folks, give them at least the opportunity to move into the city if they choose to, if the housing was available. Also, affordable housing units are needed not only for sale, but also for rent. So the market is needy on both sides of the sectors. And we recognize that you've got some challenges within your current regulatory structure that make it a little challenging to develop housing and ensure that that's the high quality infill that would really serve the city well. So understanding all of those things, we really start to make it possible to start filling out our vision with regard to future land use. And so to do that, in September, we conducted a 2-hour workshop. We had 4 groups of folks, about 15 participants, but we really drilled down on how and where we should distribute the need for different types of land use to be identified for future development. This also sort of led into a conversation about economic development, how and where different types of economic development should be accommodated, as well as the transportation infrastructure to get people to and from all of those places. So first thing we needed to understand was really how many people we're trying to accommodate. And so for this, we used a few different sources. The state demographer identifies Payne County as growing within the next 20 years at about 10,000 people, 10,000 additional people within the population of Payne County. If Stillwater maintains its distribution or market share of those people, it's about 6,200 people that would be moving into Stillwater. That number, coincidentally, is consistent with what our housing research indicated, which was the need for about 3,000 new residential units to accommodate about 6,200 people. So we felt like that was a good benchmark. And so bare minimum, we need to accommodate 6,200 people. We expect those people just to be general growth, represent general growth within the coming 20 years. We also said, okay, let's challenge ourselves. Let's decide if there are additional opportunities, can we capture additional folks that are already within the region? And so focusing on people who are part of the Stillwater workforce, but not residents of Stillwater. 8,000 is about 50% of those folks based on today's numbers. We also looked at OSU graduates. There's a lot of conversation that we've had is how do we capture and retain some of those graduating OSU students. So 3,000 is actually only about, I think, 5% of the estimated graduates over the next 20 years. So low number there, but we also decided that it would be appropriate to throw in some additional OSU students. And so the 700 students, this is just like a number that we anticipate would be a way to help relieve some of the housing market. So right now, your housing market is trying to accommodate a lot of different things. You've got people who are residents, who are employees within the city or just residents within the city. And then of course you have the student population, and they're all fighting for the same residential units. So we tried to identify, maybe there's a little bit of a relief valve. If we can identify enough housing opportunities, then we can accommodate all of these different folks. That gives us 17,900 people in the next 20 years to accommodate. And so we put the challenge to the folks in the workshop, see if you can accommodate between 15 and 20,000 people with identifying where new growth would be desirable and what that new growth would look like. There were 4 different scenarios developed through that workshop, and then we took that information to the advisory committee where we sort of distilled it down to one preferred scenario. And so the graphic that you see on the right just represents the type and distribution of land uses that are preferred moving forward. And so you'll see that the yellow represents low density, generally single family detached neighborhoods. The orange is moderate density, so those are your infill opportunities, and those are those things that are kind of going to bridge between duplex and your smaller apartment complexes. High density is the brown. A couple of opportunities identified for that. And then red is retail and entertainment. The purple color is an employment use, so industrial and skilled trades could be accommodated in those locations. A lot of this really focuses on centralizing density and providing some opportunities for infill, maximizing vacant properties that are already within the city itself, and also providing some opportunities for placemaking and mixed-use development, particularly within the core and along some of your main corridors. So next steps. This is just a kind of a graphic that's start to finish. We've basically completed the community engagement phase, although I will say community engagement extends through the entirety of the project, but we're really kind of at the tail end of the plan development piece of the project where we're drafting content and building out the different plan chapters. Once we have that, we'll have another conversation with the advisory committee and we'll talk specifically about that implementation action plan. And once that's done, we have, of course, the code diagnostic, which is something that's already in the works to identify opportunities to align your regulations with the desired future that's expressed within the plan recommendations. So in February, or probably late February, early March, is when we'll meet with the advisory committee again, and then we anticipate being ready for the final community open house in late March, early April. There we go. The project website's still active. You can access it using that QR code if you choose. But I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Dawn. Councilors, questions?
Dawn, could you talk a little bit about so you've done all these kind of individual studies with some specific focus on housing and economic development. Can you tell us or share with us a little bit about what the outputs of that will be? So will there be will that be embedded in our comprehensive plan? Will it be an addendum to our comprehensive plan? How will this council and future councils access all the data and all the findings that you've pulled?
We'll have, we do have a specific document that is the housing assessment, and so that is a separate sidecar document. The content of that, the recommendations from that, will be utilized as we build out and write the housing and neighborhoods chapter of the comprehensive plan, but we'll attach that assessment as an appendix to your comprehensive plan so that you have the entirety of that information. The economic development piece is a little bit different. It's not going to be a separate document. It will all be part of the economic development and redevelopment chapter of the plan.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
I know sometimes we have kind of these side studies that we have trouble kind of finding later on. So it's great that they'll be kind of pulled together in one place.
Yeah.
All right, so all kinds of questions here, which I'm not sure you can answer, but concerns is you talked about adding 6,200 people in 6,200 people in 20 years. Are you looking at expanding the city, or are you trying to fit all these people into our existing city limits?
The majority of those folks can fit within the city limits. As you see on the graphic, And we did this with a Lego exercise
Right. I was there.
at the workshop. Yes, sir, you were there. There are 2 locations here that show some development that would occur outside the current city limits, but the majority of those folks could be housed within your existing city limits. It would be a good piece of it is infill development, but there are enough vacant properties and enough underdeveloped properties to accommodate that number.
Okay. You mentioned early on you had 86 comments, 86 sticky notes. Any common thread that runs through those that you've seen?
So I will say that on the map item, we got quite a few comments about the condition of roads in different locations.
Really?
You all are very well aware of that, I'm sure. We heard that, for the most part, people are interested in new opportunities. There's a lot of love for Stillwater, so a lot of that's reflected in the comments. Some things are very practical, like, our neighborhoods need sidewalks. We want to have better trail access to different parts of the community. So things like that are probably the common threads that, off the top of my head, ring.
All right, one more.
Okay.
You might have heard 6th Street is going to be reconstructed at some point in time.
Heard this.
We will figure out when, sometime in the next 20 years. Will that be part of your plan? Will you consider that as part of the long-term plan?
So I know that the 6th Street Corridor Plan identifies a lot of, adjustments in future state for that corridor. We are referencing and reviewing all of those adopted policy documents so that what we recommend and propose is not in conflict with those. We want to make sure that they're kind of working together.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think on one of the last meetings the advisory council had, we talked about making sure we had the university's long-term plan and some of the other kind of the hospital long-term plan and some of the other entities. Have we been able to acquire some of those at this point?
We have the university's current long-range plan. We've reached out to the school district, and I'm not sure if we've reached out to the hospitals yet, but that is on the list. Yes, sir.
My other comment, and I'm on the advisory council for this, and so I've been to these meetings, and I know we're talking about this, but I think, all of us from the standpoint of comprehensive plans or any of the other plans that we've been a part of helping put together, the main concern is always implementation, right? We have a long, proud history in this community of keeping plans on shelves, and it's probably true of a lot of communities, but as we get into this piece of building the actual implementation plan, to me, this is probably the most important part of the plan, right? Putting together what we want it to look like in 25 years is great, but if we don't actually put any of that on the ground, it doesn't really matter what we said we wanted. And so, I know I just want to sort of express how important the implementation piece is, and working with the council and staff and the people who are actually going to have to, I think I made one of this comment in one of the advisory committee meetings that, everybody's the vision of, we want to do lots of infill development, we want to build lots of really cool, infill sorts of things, that really falls to the council and the staff to put together real policy that allows that to happen. As you said, our current regulations sometimes can get in the way of that. And so I just really want us all to be engaged as much as we can be on what this implementation actually looks like. And the people who are going to be having to, not necessarily us, because in 20 years it won't be us up here, but a council and a staff that are going to have to be able to practically put this stuff into practice. I'm really excited about this part of the plan, but also really this is the part I really care about, is how does this actually make it to our community streets and neighborhoods and all that sort of thing.
Right. It's got to be actionable. Our typical approach to putting together that action item matrix or implementation matrix is to identify kind of short, mid, and long-term goals and make sure that they are measurable. So if we say that we want to, be more efficient in utilization of land, then you've got to have some way to measure that. Are we having more like really long utility line extensions for main lines, or are we able to put more density on existing infrastructure? That's something that's measurable as long as we kind of demonstrate what you need to calculate and keep track of. So we want to make sure, because you typically don't do what you don't measure and report out on. You got to have that accountability. So we definitely intend to build that in, and that's part of the conversation that we'll be having with the advisory committee when we meet next.
Great, and I think it's important to make sure we have some local flavor in terms of what those implementations are going to look like and what those goals will be that are tailored to sort of how we know the community of Stillwater operates, right?
Yeah.
Certain things that we know, well, that's not really how we do things around here, or we know that's going to be a bigger challenge than maybe if we can find a different way to do it because of just sort of historically Stillwater's, there's certain ways that we get things done here and certain ways that are more challenging than others. And so I hope that all gets kind of built into, I don't want to just put a plan out that says you need to do X, Y, and Z, and we kind of look at it and go, well, we know we're not going to be able to do X and Y because that's just not going to happen in Stillwater, right? I mean, we want to find implementation goals that we do feel are actionable for us as a community.
And we're going to lean on the advisory committee and staff to really help us understand what fits into the model that works here in Stillwater and what might be an outlier in that regard.
Great.
When did you say the next sort of community type meeting?
We're looking at that probably end of March, early April.
Thank you.
Yes.
And that's really more of a rollout of the final plan.
Correct. We'll want to review that with the advisory committee, make sure that they're comfortable with it before we take it to the public, but then we'll post it on the website and start marching that around and getting feedback, make sure that we've addressed the things that people expected us to address.
Don, could you talk a little bit about so this has been a more robust planning process than we've gone through in a while. Can you talk a little bit about what communities typically do? I know in Oklahoma City, they have their comprehensive plan really visible and accessible. It's not just a button. They've kind of got it broken out and explained on their website. Can you talk a little bit about what that might look like for us, or kind of how you would recommend we make sure it's a kind of easy to access? I know we've done a lot of work on our website, but is that something traditionally that we see where the plan is really accessible to the public?
So probably the most effective thing that I've seen in plans that I've done maybe in the last 5 years is we put together an ArcGIS story map that reflects the core content of the plan. These plans are big, beefy, wordy documents. We're trying to make it as graphic and interesting as possible, but there's a lot of data in the plan document itself, and that's not super interesting unless you're kind of a wonk and you want to dig down into those particular topics. But we want to make sure that the recommendations have the necessary support to them. A way to distill that down is to use something like a story map or another way to utilize the website to display the information and really show the vision and guiding principles, the key goals within the different plan sections, and maybe just enough verbiage to give people an understanding of why that's an important element of the plan and what that means to the community moving forward. And then have maybe a dashboard of material up there so that you can put out to the public and maybe update it quarterly or biannually to show progress towards accomplishing the goals that are outlined in the plan.
Is that included in our scope with you all? Do you know?
I will have to double check that. I think that we probably did have a conversation about the story map. We've definitely got the website already kind of compiled, so beefing up the website and being able to port that to the city is definitely possible, easy.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anything further, counselors?
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you
Don.
very much.
Thanks for all your work. Item 8 is ordinances. On second read, ordinance 3546. I think city attorney has a comment on this one before we read it.
Yes, I've had recent conversations with the Center for Economic Development Law, the attorneys that represent the city, and CETA as special counsel for economic and TIF-related matters. And based on their advice, I recommend continuing action on ordinance number 3546. This is the ordinance that considers approval of adopting the Stillwater Data Center Economic Development Project Plan and the supporting incentive districts. As we've previously discussed at meetings, this project also requires approval of an economic development agreement that would outline the respective parties' obligations in connection with that development. Those negotiations are still ongoing. It's in the city's best interest to defer action on this ordinance until we can finalize that agreement. So I would recommend the council entertain a motion to continue action on ordinance number 3546 until January 13th, 2025.
Thank you. Councilors?
I move to continue ordinance 3546 to the January 13, 2025 meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to continue the ordinance. Please vote. The vote of 5-0, ordinance 3546 will be continued to January 13, 2025. Item 8B is ordinance 3550, an ordinance amending Chapter 2, Administration, Article 5, Officers and Employees by repealing Section 2-552 Collective Bargaining Unit Agreements in its entirety. Councilors?
I move adoption of ordinance 3550.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the ordinance. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, ordinance 3550 is adopted. Item 9 is appointments. We have a couple of folks on the Stillwater Medical Center Authority whose terms are expiring. They are both willing to continue to serve and have been productive and helpful members of that board. So I will move that Dr. Todd Green and Mr. Lowell Bartow are appointed to new 3-year terms on the Stillwater Medical Center Authority Board.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, Todd Green and Lowell Bartow are appointed to new terms on the SMCA. That takes us to reports from the officers and the board. Ms. Carnley.
Request for an executive session pursuant to 25 OS 307B1 for the purpose of discussing the employment, hiring, appointment, promotion, demotion, disciplining, or resignation of interim city manager Brady Moore.
Thank you. Mr. Moore.
Yes, just want to remind everybody that city offices will be closed on Wednesday, December 25th for Christmas and Wednesday, January 1st for New Year's Day. The waste management calendar is adjusted for those holidays, much like it was last week for the Thanksgiving. For the weeks of Christmas and New Year's, normal trash, recycling, and yard waste will be picked up, but they'll be delayed one day since both holidays are on a Wednesday. For example, if your normal trash pickup day is on Wednesday, then your trash will be picked up on the following day on Thursday. For me, I'm a Friday pickup, so my trash pickup that week will be on Saturday. So, also residents who have a live Christmas tree during the holiday season, after the holiday, they can bundle up their tree and place it on the curb as part of the city's regular yard waste collection free of charge. It's a great service that we offer our customers. And all decorations must be removed from the trees, and bundles must be less than 4 feet long, 18 inches across, and less than 50 pounds. For more information and the collection schedule, you can go to stillwaterok.gov/waste management or call our waste management office at 405-742-8269.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Vice Mayor Jaloski.
Yes, the city is accepting applications for various committees, including the Board of Drainage Appeals, Stillwater Reinvestment Plan Implementation Policy Committee, also known as the Downtown TIF number 3, and the Board of Adjustments. Committees are essential for increased development and infrastructure projects within our community. If you would like to get involved in your local government and help make Stillwater even greater, please consider serving on one or more of these committees. For more information or to apply, go to stillwaterok.gov/citizenboards.
Thank you. Councilor Hawkins?
This holiday season, the Stillwater Animal Welfare reminds those who are considering adding a furry friend to their family to adopt, not shop. If you would like to see what dogs and cats are in need of a good home, please stop by the Animal Welfare Building at 1710 South Main Street or follow Stillwater Animal Welfare on Facebook. The staff members post regular updates on Facebook about available animals, educational tips, and animal health guidance.
Thank you so much. Councilor Clerk.
Please join us on January 9 as we develop a vision plan for parks, community spaces, and public facilities. During this community meeting, we will discuss neighborhood parks and other larger community spaces. Preliminary information collected from recent surveys will be shared and discussed. We want to ensure our parks and public spaces meet the needs of our residents and families. Please join the discussion on Thursday, January 9, beginning at 5:30 p.m. at the Stillwater Community Center, room 121. For more information, go to stillwaterok.gov/parks.
Thank you. Councilor Harden.
Celebrate the holidays in Stillwater by shopping, dining, and staying local. Now through January 5th, every $50 you spend earns one entry into the 2024 Fly Home for the Holidays giveaway. You could win gift cards for American Airlines and travel through Stillwater Regional Airport. Discover amazing deals during Stillwater's holiday shopping events. Whether you're exploring Lakeview Point, Pioneer Square, the Strip, Campus Corner, or downtown Stillwater, you'll find shops and boutiques with gifts and treasures for all ages. 5 lucky winners will be randomly selected on January 15th with confirmation on January 21st. Many thanks to Visit Stillwater for organizing and hosting this event. For more information, go to visitstillwater.org.
Thank you, Councilor Harden. I will remind everyone that the holiday season is upon us and it's time to bundle up and enjoy the festivities. The Parade of Lights will be in downtown Stillwater this Thursday, December 5th at 6:30 p.m. with sweet treats and a parade. Directly afterwards, we'll enjoy a performance by Town and Gown Theater, awards, and a tree lighting with Santa in Chris Salmon Plaza. Another great event is our Holiday Heroes and Holiday Drone Show on Saturday, December 14th. Grab a cup of hot cocoa, a bite to eat, and check out the first responders' equipment from fire engines, the SEMA truck, police units, and more from 6 to 8 p.m., and then a holiday drone show beginning at 7:45. Carriage rides through downtown Stillwater and pictures with Santa are back this holiday season with the hub in Chris Salmon Plaza. These are available most evenings from 5 to 8 p.m. For a schedule of all the holiday happenings, go to stillwaterok.gov/holidays or go to visitstillwater.org, which includes light display locations and much more. I will also just note we have filing for open city council seat this week, correct? Is that this week? Right? Am I right about that?
Yes.
Yes.
Wednesday through Friday this week, filing period for.
Monday through Wednesday.
Oh, this Monday. Oh,
2nd through 4th.
2nd through 4th. I'm glad I asked. 2nd through 4th this week, filing for city council seat. All right. At this point, I will move that we recess the city council meeting prior to item 12 on the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to recess city council. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, the Stillwater City Council will now be in recess. And at this time, I will call to order the Stillwater Utilities Authority meeting for December 2nd, 2024. We have a consent docket on this agenda, which includes the item we discussed earlier this evening in City Council on the lease agreement. Questions, comments, or action on the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent docket.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve consent. Please vote. Vote of 5-0, the consent docket is approved. Any announcements or reports from the officers aboard? Is there a motion to adjourn SUA?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn the Stillwater Utilities Authority. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, SUA is now adjourned. And at this time, I will reconvene the Stillwater City Council meeting. Is there a motion to enter executive session for the reasons requested by the city attorney?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to enter executive session. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, the Stillwater City Council will now be in executive session. And we're back. Is there a motion to reconvene the Stillwater City Council in regular session?
Second.
We We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mayor Joyce,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jalowski,
Yes.
Counselor Hawkins,
Yes.
Counselor Clark,
Yes.
Counselor Harden.
Yes.
With a vote of 5-0, we're now back in regular session as Stillwater City Council. Any action from executive session?
I move to promote Brady Moore to city manager.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to promote Brady Moore to the city manager position. Please vote.
Mayor Joyce,
Yes.
Vice Mayor
Push
Jalowski,
the button.
Yes.
Counselor Hawkins,
Yes.
Counselor Clark,
Yes.
Counselor Harden.
Yes.
With a vote of 5-0, Brady Moore is the new city manager of the city of Stillwater. Any further action? Actually, we will direct city attorney to work on negotiating an employment contract with Brady for the city manager position, and we'll bring that back at our next meeting. Any further action? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mayor Joyce,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jalowski,
Yes.
Counselor Hawkins,
Yes.
Counselor Clark,
Yes.
Counselor Harden.
Yes.
With a vote of 5-0, the Stillwater City Council is now adjourned, and that concludes our meetings for the evening.